right, everybody, welcome to the League Community Podcast. Here back another week with me, Dylan Most Dirty, and we have guest host Patrick Scarzard Scarborough. Say hi to the people, Patrick.
Hello, people.
Perfect. And today we are here with two members of the Playtest team here at Riot Games to talk a little bit about themselves and that team's operation. So we've got Adam Cohen, also known as Aphic, I believe.
Yeah, it's Riot Aphic in game.
Oh, okay. My bad. Sorry. Got a professional here.
He works at Riot, Dylan.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
He knows how to get a real
Somehow
job.
I figured that they wouldn't be okay with me doing Riot a Dylan Most Dirty. I figured I should just keep the Riot out of it.
Yeah, at a certain point, it's too many letters. And then we also have Scott Hong, better known in the amateur League of Legends scene as Sicko Scott. And I say better known in the amateur scene because I think he scored a kill on almost every single person in the promotion tournament at one point or another.
I did not know that. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that about you, Scott.
Oh, okay. Cool.
There you go. You're bloodthirsty.
Cool. And so, as I mentioned, these two fine gentlemen with us today are a member of the Riot Playtest team, which is a relatively new team as far as the as far as Riot goes at this point. Something that has become increasingly necessary over the years as the company has gotten larger, and they do a lot of cool stuff. So we have them here to talk to us a little bit about those operations. So. I mean, I guess Adam, just to jump into it, why don't you give us a quick little snapshot of just like what your team does before we go into the history a bit?
Sure. So standard day involves us starting off with our morning stand-up where we basically go over a bunch of issues that we're working on, iterating on. We basically use that time to prioritize changes for the day. Anything from one patch out to, 3 champions out even.
And when you say prioritize issues, what is it exactly that you're talking about that your team takes on?
So we basically play test stuff. Anything
any and all stuff?
Anything that has ever showed up in a patch note, we have likely play tested at some point.
Okay.
So that stuff.
All right. So almost anything that we need.
And so the
Yes.
difference here is that unlike, in a lot of cases where a designer might make a champion and then playtest it, playtesting is you and your team's job. That is what you guys do all the time.
That is the vast majority of what we do, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So when we're prioritizing, after we prioritize stuff, we typically have our morning game where we try and throw some crazier stuff out there. The ideas aren't necessarily ironed out yet, but we just try and get a feel for them. So we'll have lots of new champions, lots of changes. Those games get pretty crazy pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely a lot more of the experimental stuff. I know, because I kind of work on the other side of the fence from you guys, right? Like I'm over with design, and in our meetings, we're like, we'll start off at a change list. Like, what if Jarvan's ultimate spawned like 8 flags around it? And in the past, we used to be like, well, there's no time. We can only playtest so many times a day. And now we're just like, oh, just throw some crazy stuff in there, and then we'll just give it to their team, and I'm sure they'll come out with something. Scott, how has the experience been like for you now that you have made the transition from like being someone that was outside and played the game a lot to now being a professional playtester? What is that like?
It's actually pretty crazy, right? Most of the time when I played on live, I would think, wow, I can't believe this change list went through, right? Like, this actually breaks the character. They're so broke. They're so OP, right?
Yeah.
Who are those idiots on the other side of the...
Exactly, right?
And you were like, it's me!
Yeah.
I'm the idiot!
now I look at Reddit and I just see, what was the game? What is the live balance team doing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, although we aren't on live balance, we deal a lot with the change lists that go through their team. And it's pretty strange, right?
Yeah, being on the other side.
Yeah.
Where do you think so I imagine now you have that perspective. Where do you think some of that disconnect comes from? I imagine that you're not sitting here in the office going, God, I'm an idiot. Why is this change going out? Quite so much as you might have been on the other side. Where do you think that divide comes from?
I think the biggest thing is that when people test stuff on the live environment, they have millions of games, right? They have a lot of data to go through, whereas for us, we have a limited amount of tests, so we can't really isolate changes in themselves, right? If you were to test something like Ziggs Q doing 10 more damage, how can we possibly get an actual read on that change, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is that we simply don't have the manpower to go through all the changes and isolate them.
Gotcha. And I think that really, from as far as I understand it, speaks to the need behind your team, essentially. Is just that there is that problem of scale. League is a huge game that patches out once every 2 weeks, as I would say without fail, but don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
And
sometimes there's a couple days.
There's always Hecarim patch.
Oh.
And we commit to making those patches very contentful, and nowhere is that I would say more of an art rather than a science maybe than with the gameplay stuff. And we found over the years long ago, like Adam, you were here when the company was smaller, like just keeping up with that demand was so tough, and we went through a lot of different things along those lines. Can you maybe talk about some of the historical context behind playtesting at Riot like years ago?
Yeah. So when I started it, or just before I started it, it was pretty crazy. Games weren't exactly balanced. There were...
And this is how many years ago?
This is maybe 2.5 years ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So around then, games were not that balanced. Everything was just kind of thrown in, and players like, oh yeah, that felt like it did what we were trying to go for, and then it wasn't exactly that easy to pull conclusions from the playtests themselves.
Sure.
So,
and
yeah.
I think I recall, from being here, I've been here about almost 5 years at this point. It was basically a case of, are you top tier at League of Legends? We need you for playtests. Like, it doesn't matter if you're an artist or whatever. Like, we're gonna need to rope you into this top flight playtest, because in addition to the ones where just the champion designers were testing out, or even like the artists would be playing, like we tried to at least have like one top flight one a day or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this also happened because I was back when I was a designer and we were working on the game's changes. It was like myself, Roku, Jat, Static. It was like we had about, I want to say, like at any given moment, about 8 of us that were considered like top level at the time. And then you would see a pretty big drop off after that. So if anyone was sick or if anyone had a conflicting meeting or something, you're really risking the integrity of that test to say like, okay, we're in like the crunch days of Aatrox and we're like putting in all these changes. He's about to go to PBE, and it's like, we need to know, does he need 20 more healing on this thing or 50 more healing? What does that do? And then if you have someone who, shout outs to all the people in gold out there, right? But if you have someone who is at a much lower level and now that lane gets snowballed, or even just bottom lane across the map and can warp the whole game, it becomes really, really difficult to tell. And that's one playtest. You can't get that time back. You guys still have to go do work for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and it's not their job, like how it's their job might be something else specifically, gameplay designer, champion designer, not purely playtesting and making sure that everything is as tight as it can be.
Yeah. So at least from my perspective, and you can probably, help me out here, it was really like we had hit a point where, Jack goes off to esports, Roku goes off, we're, kind of the Dragon Balls have spread across the universe at this point. And, we need help filling tests. And so Adam was one of them, but we started to get a bunch of really high level QA people and, a couple of people from esports who were like, oh, I have the time and I like to do it. And so we started to put playtests back together again with this competitive lens of like, okay, we need this type of high level person. And then there started to be some of them who were very consistent. And I think that's when you guys really came to the conclusion that something should be done.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty accurate for the most part. I definitely started out by being one of those people that filled in.
Yeah.
After, everyone left. And then after a certain point, we just needed the playtest team in general.
So what was kind of the catalyst? Like what, obviously there was, as Patrick mentioned, the company was just getting bigger, more people coming on board. League had been around longer, so people, we started just getting, some more top flight players. But what kind of kicked it into gear into the like dedicated, 10 plus member playtest team as we have it today, with you at the head and the mission of it being to playtest consistently?
Yeah, so it really started with Greg Street, Ghostcrawler, actually just wanting a playtest team. I don't know too much of the specifics around that, but that was the desire initially. And I had just finished up working on the team I was on. It was AI at the time. And from there, we put together a team, and I was the first playtester, if you will. At that point, Greg Street wanted us to make sure we could fill out our game so we could test more. Main reason being playtests were the kind of bottleneck in the whole pipeline. So we were trying to get in a bunch of changes, but truth is we just had no idea how they all would play together. So getting in more playtests makes it so you can iterate more, makes it so you can put more changes in, makes it so you can do more cool stuff. And that's kind of where it all started.
Sure. Yeah, and from what I recall, you guys, came at it with the goal of I think initially like at least doubling the number of playtests, and then really just kind of professionalizing the process as well, like making it about people whose jobs were focused on this, and I think the big challenge there, though, obviously right away is where you find the people for that. Scott, how did you get involved?
Funnily enough, I actually looked on Reddit, and there was a job post for playtest team.
That's where I go for all my job listings. Actually.
I think I remember that.
jobs.
I think I remember that thread. So yeah, that was a bit out there as a hiring method. Adam, I guess you could probably give us some context on that.
Yeah, so we learned pretty early on that, as Scarborough was alluding to earlier, you kind of want playtests to be similar skilled.
Yeah.
We have lots of gold, silver, platinum, whatever, but we didn't really have the high end covered to the same extent. Turns out there's a lower percentage of people at that percent.
Right. And specifically, it's the high end people that have the time to really commit to it, right? Because like Turley and Kobe and Jad are all really good players that are also like shoutcasting 18 hours a day or like whatever like weird schedule we have them on, right? So expecting people like that to come over and be like, oh yeah, commit your time, like your work hours to that is actually really tough.
So yeah, we knew lots of high level players looked at Reddit. That's something I do in my free time. So it makes sense that if you're looking for those high level players.
Hey, what do? I post on Reddit. Holy shit! Let's throw up an ad.
Yeah, no, I mean that.
Well, I mean,
was
clearly
basically
it worked,
the
right? I mean, that's the. Well, how many people did we actually get from that, to your recollection?
Scott? No, it was maybe 5-ish. It was 5 or so, I'd say.
Okay.
I remember going through that interview process, and it was a gauntlet of death.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember
there was nicely.
I imagine you guys got a lot of responses.
Yeah, a lot of them were like one sentence, like "Rito, hire me." So
Sure. Yeah.
There were varying levels of
Some people were definitely in it for the memes. Scott, I want to kick it back to you because you are, I believe, at the time of my uttering the sentence, the highest rated player in all of the Dominion of Riot Games.
Yes, that is true.
You were like,
Patrick hesitated, but Scott did not hesitate.
Yeah, you're like on a cloud right now. You're like, yes, indeed, it is I. Well, I didn't know like Abe had passed you or someone or something. So you mentioned earlier, right? You're talking about like, oh, well, if you do like a Ziggs queue at 10, it's harder for us to tell the impact of those versus like millions of games collecting data. But I know you and your team are really, really good at still figuring out like the specifics of small changes. I wanted to know, in your mind, what do you think are the advantages now that you've been a part of the playtest team for a long time, right? Because we aren't just grabbing more people for more tests, right? Like, where do you feel like your team has their comfort zone or really feels confident, when you're picking up changes and doing things like that?
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with familiarity. Since we have a much larger team than before, a lot of people specialize in certain champions or certain lanes, right? League is a 5v5 game, so there's 5 unique roles.
Yeah.
The big thing with getting more players is that they play those distinct roles. So if we're doing something like Ziggs, I'm a jungler, so I have no idea what Ziggs does, right? And he throws bombs and he kills stuff. That's pretty much all I know. But to know the intricacies of that champion, we need someone who plays mid lane, and hopefully they have some familiarity with that champion.
So how do you feel like the matchup knowledge spread is across your whole team? Do you feel like you guys truly the X-Men? Like each of you are specialized on all the different characters?
That'd be really nice. I think a lot of us are support and jungler mains, unfortunately, but we certainly do have enough people to fill in that knowledge gap for mid lane, top lane, and AD carry.
So what I'm hearing is, if anyone out there listening to this podcast is an Urgot Challenger player, we may need you. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's a hole that maybe needs filling.
It's very possible.
You're like, oh, I don't know. Who's got this one? I'm not sure how it is.
How about that old change that just went out? I think it's good.
Oh, yeah. Yo, the Fear Bomb?
Yeah.
Yo, the Fear Bomb is sick. I can only imagine what those playtests were like.
Crab Baby is back.
That's funny. We actually have someone who does play Urgot. I mean, he's no 3,000
never mind.
player.
Shout outs to the 5 Urgot players out there. I didn't mean to offend you.
Yeah, it's funny because we were playing that change, and he ulted and everyone ran away. We're like, but I didn't get to fair. I was like, no, everyone ran away. It literally did the same thing. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
emergent gameplay.
Yes, exactly. Still accomplishing its goals.
So how many people are on the team now? How many people do you guys have? Is it just 5v5? Is it just 10 people, or is that how you do it?
We're currently at 11, and the ideal number is 12.
Okay.
Why is that?
So a few things. One, if someone is out, it is nice to be able to fill out the game regardless.
Good point.
Yes, that is one. And two,
You mean having a backup plan is good?
yeah, right.
Damn.
Having a spectator in the game to have kind of that, unbiased opinion on how things played out or identify what really turned a game is valuable in its own sense.
Yeah.
So you guys, I mean, so that's pretty interesting to me. Is that a dedicated person? Is that just kind of like someone draws the short straw for the day, or?
It can be however we decide is most efficient.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yes to everything.
Oh, so maybe like if somebody is particularly good at a certain thing, you're going to want them like really paying attention to the guy playing that new champ in that role or something like that. Maybe
that is certainly one way we could go about it.
Interesting. Okay. So you guys are really coming at this. Like I mentioned, it's a professionalized approach. That's the interesting thing for me. Having been here for a good amount of time, I remember that once upon a time when the company was really small, it desperate to playtest all these, and this is when we were releasing champions, very very frequently, desperate to playtest all this stuff. There was actually this thing called a company playtest. Were you around for that, Adam?
CPT, baby.
I was around as that died out.
As that died out,
As we lay CPT to bed.
Exactly. And so for you listeners out there, what that was basically every morning, just people throughout the company would log on into an internal environment and play test, and that sounds awesome. And it was awesome. The challenge there is getting usable feedback, obviously, because then you've got like me and like 4 of my player support buddies at the time playing like 5 random dudes from the other end of the company who we've not met, and like some people may be coming at it from a strict bug testing perspective. Some people are maybe just trying a little harder to win. There's not really balanced teams.
Mountains of salt.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to camp top, right? Like they never expect the 7th gank.
Yeah, I know. That was.
And there'd be a lot of soft rules like if you're snowballing, try and hold back, but it'd all be soft stuff, like, so what exactly does that mean? My interpretation would be that maybe I just get a quadra kill rather than a pentakill.
Yeah, rather than a pentakill.
Yeah, and so as you mentioned at some point, that had to die. And I think that's the interesting thing is this term here, playtest. It entails 2 words that kind of seem in opposition almost to an extent. So I'm curious to hear a little more about how you guys go about that process. How do you keep people's eye on the prize where even if they're getting stomped on in lane, they can keep a good eye towards it, or if they're balling out of control, they can be like, all right, we need to get good data out of this. How do you manage that?
As someone who gets stomped in lane a lot, I'd imagine, Scott, tell me how you deal with it.
How do you do that, Scott?
Softball that in there.
And got him.
I think the biggest thing is accountability, right? We're all passionate League of Legends players, so we love the game. We play it all the time, right? But when we're playtesting, we need to keep in mind that it's not just a game. It's our responsibility to make sure things come out balanced. And to do that, we need to have a relatively controlled environment, right? We need to not have people go like 13-0 and just like...
We've seen those games.
Yeah, that happens occasionally in our games.
Well, how do those go, right? Because I imagine... I know I have put very broken things into the game before. I know many of my peers and compatriots have done as well. Like, do you just call it when someone gets too far ahead, or is it like, or is that experience in and of itself actually really valuable?
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer is those games are typically less valuable.
Okay.
When a LeBlanc gets 10 kills up and you're like, hey, Jin's coming out soon, let's see how he does in a close game, and LeBlanc comes up and just like, combo dead. It's like, well... That's what happens.
Yeah.
You don't really get much out of that.
Yeah, it's like you turn and you're like, August, I don't think the Q buffs were enough. I did explode.
So I imagine that where that the importance there is what we've talked about consistent consistent skill levels between the testers, and also making sure people are in their right roles, because that's when you get that type of stuff really badly. I imagine is like it can happen anytime, but it's really going to happen when there's mismatches as well. Mm-hmm. You got that master dude up against the plat dude or something like that. Is that right? Did I get that right? Is it Diamond? I can't keep track. They're so far away from me. I have no idea.
You're like, I can't see that.
What are these distant
It's
reaches?
Challenger, Master, Diamond, Platinum.
Okay, thank you.
and then gold, silver, bronze, Dylan.
You got,
I just realized how much better everyone in this room is than me, and it's kind of I'm shrinking.
It's okay. I kind of want to go back to something you were talking about, Ray, because when you're talking about the accountability and everything, you hit on something where you said it's your responsibility to make sure that you're getting the best results that you can get. And I know that that's something that I was kind of always impressed by, because we had a playtest team way
Way
back in the
back.
day, right? And like shout outs to any of them right now. They were true legends of the game in their day. But I know a thing was there wasn't a lot of communication between them and other people. They would just kind of get changes dumped on them, and then that would be it. But I know you guys really do kind of pick up and own a lot of these changes and kind of really feel responsible for their success. What is that process like for you? Like tell me about that.
Sure. I think first thing first is that we need to reach consensus as a team. We need to discuss a certain change list, right? And if it's something that we can't agree upon, that's also really good, right? As long as we can reach a conclusion in some form. Once we hit that point, we go over to talk to designers or whoever's in charge of the change list, and we have another discussion saying why this needs to change or why this is good for X reason.
So do you feel like actually really empowered? Because I know that design is almost like it's like the dark castle off in the distance sometimes to the rest of the company, right? It's like, I know wizards live there. I don't want to go knock on the door,
Yeah,
you know, but but it's like, I know every time Dylan comes by to like hit someone up, even for this podcast, he's like, excuse me, Dark Lord, will you do an Aurelian Soul
Please,
podcast? Leave me. We have an ideation meeting. But I know it's like, I mean, do you feel really comfortable? Was that something you had to learn, or do you feel empowered to kind of carry that stuff through?
Definitely feel empowered. When I first started, I was pretty hesitant to like meet the makers of Echo or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this guy actually made a champion. This is amazing.
Whoa.
Right?
And now you're just like, yeah, whatever.
And then you
Yeah,
realize
yeah.
it's August. And you're like, oh.
You're like, oh, he looks like some string cheese wearing glasses.
Oh my
Probably gonna be
God.
fun.
Podcast is getting canceled. I'm gonna come in here next time. August is gonna be standing here. Hello, Dylan. I hear you made a podcast.
And then you will lightly blow and he will fall over. And then it will be like, yeah, I fucking love August. I'm sorry.
He's the man. He's the
I had
man.
to go in. I had to go in.
I was gonna say too, Scott. You probably were like, oh man, this guy made Echo, but then eventually you realized, wait a minute, I'm better than everyone at this company. So that probably helped a bit too.
He was hoping to come here to train his skills, and he was like, "I'm sorry, Scott.
So
We can't change you."
I gotta say as well, like you guys actually have like what I think is like the coolest spot in the office. You actually have your, you know, like desks here, right, are pretty freeform and they're pretty much scattered about, but you guys actually have this sweet little circle of intense playtesting. And I think when I drove by last time, don't you guys actually have some like creed or freaking like, you know, litany or canticles or something up on the wall? Like, this is the order of the playtest.
So
These
that
be
was
the
one of-
rules you must abide by.
Yeah,
So that's
tell us
two
about
things,
that, Adam.
actually.
Tell us
Two
about
things
that.
going on there. One, we do have, you know, a set of guidelines to follow. That's off to the side from the, you know, the candlelit vigil.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The candlelit vigil is a former playtester who moved to a different team, and we mourned his loss. So, you know,
Rip.
we stalked his Facebook, photoshopped pictures of all of us on one of his pictures. It's really entertaining, but you know, that's
You guys sound like a fun bunch. Well, I know that's something that's happened a bit actually. Is you guys have sent people to various other teams throughout Riot. I believe, in fact, Zyrene actually made a stop on the playtest team, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
stopped on the train. So
So-
some people have graduated from Playtest Academy.
So yeah, before Zyrene graduated, he actually did a lot of work on Rek'Sai. I say graduated, but you know,
a lot of work.
it was a between competitive seasons thing. Yeah,
Right.
So he actually took point on Rek'Sai.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of talking with the designer. Played her the most, and you know, the whole time he was saying, yeah, this champion's pretty good, right? Like, you know, balanced champion. We're like, Zyrene, you kidding me? You're destroying everyone. He's like, no, it's fine. You guys just aren't warding. Like, oh my god. And then we see Rek'Sai hit live.
Release Rek'Sai.
Champions ganking from like behind turrets. Like, oh, I guess I need to ward the entire enemy map.
Okay, all right. You heard it here, folks.
I mean, Aiden was right.
Zyrene.
Yeah, Zyrene was right. You
Zyrene.
weren't warding the entirety of the map.
I mean, I personally wasn't playing in spectator mode, so I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah, I know, that's true. Yeah, League of Legends evolves into a 6v6, where you need someone in the spectator gunner position taking point.
Great stuff.
Scott, have you had anything like that? Have you taken point on a character recently, or anything like that? Did you get to feel like you are responsible for some abomination on live?
Well, I guess the most recent champ I worked on was Kindred.
Yeah.
I think it released relatively.
Thanks, buddy.
That was a good release. Come
Yeah,
on,
I know
man.
it was.
I
I'm not gonna.
think it released relatively well as a ranged marksman in the jungle, since like
Right.
Yeah, it sounds pretty tough
yeah,
too.
to be a large skill differential, right, between lower elo and higher elo players. So that was kind of like our problem with Kindred. To my knowledge, she wasn't released, or they were not released.
There, I was about to correct you.
Sorry, they were not released ridiculously overpowered. So
Yeah.
that,
Well, so what is, because that's kind of a different experience from the one that we've talked about, right? Because I imagine you play kind of all the jungle greatest hits, right? Like you're like a Nidalee player, an Elise player, Evelyn player, and
I like winning. Yeah.
I saw you playing Udyr the other day.
I do enjoy winning. Well, so I know that like, hey, if I was like, guys, we got to take Nidalee's spear down by 60. Like, I feel confident that you'd be able to get me a read on that. But what is it like when you're dealing with kind of the unknown stuff, right? Because this can happen with systems changes, especially when you guys are doing stuff like Rift Herald or like Kindred, right? Which is a complete shakeup for that role. How do you find your footing? How do you feel confident in the value that you're providing in the feedback?
It's a really difficult task. We can never reach 100% confidence, but we certainly try our best.
Not with that attitude. Maybe if you guys were more confident, you could be.
We certainly try our best to be as confident in those new champions. What we'd like to do is try and reference those champions relative to the other ones that are similar in that position, right? So for Kindred, there wasn't a good reference point.
yeah, it's completely new.
So it was maybe a bit more difficult for that. But say we're talking about Comet Dragon, right? Who was just recently released. Comet Dragon, whatever.
Those internal names.
Yeah. Aurelian Soul. He would be very offended.
Yeah. Well,
and he would throw a star at you.
It's a little easier for that one since it's just a mid laner, right? You can compare it to something like someone who likes to roam a lot, like TF.
Yeah.
So it's easier to reference point. Without reference point, we started just go in the dark and say, this seems appropriate, right?
Yeah. I remember what we were doing for Kindred. I mean, you can say, all right, marksman, so let's put a marksman on him. And then we see people like counter jungling themselves, leaving up, jungle camps. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't know, I don't jungle. Like, okay, that's probably a problem. Then we see jungle mains play Kindred and like, all right, I'm doing really well. And then late game comes around and they dive in head first. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't know. How do you play a marksman late game?
Yeah.
Like, well,
new challenges.
All right, we just identified a problem.
I love Kindred because I feel like you hear the AD carry and the jungler most blaming one another for their losses, and so we just made them the same champion.
He is the solution.
Yeah. That's how you get over all the toxicity.
There is
Make
no
the
tribunal.
jungler and the AD
There is
carry.
no tribunal. There is only Kindred.
Yeah. That's how you get judged.
So ultimately, I think what it sounded like here is there's no perfect solution. It's just about making it better and better over time. And so I imagine to a great extent that's obviously like team staffing. You mentioned making sure that you have people with the right skill levels, people in the right roles, all that type of stuff, and you got to maintain that over time. So you have a bit of the amateur background you mentioned that you used to. I believe you were briefly in Challenger Series. Is it?
I think I was in the first Challenger Series.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so, how exactly? So you got into this through the Reddit thread. Who else did we get through the Reddit thread? Was it mostly former kind of like amateurs or pros or what?
It was a mix of people. So there were a lot of low to high diamond applications. We picked out the best of those in the sense that they were able to talk intelligently about the game and had strong communication skills. Other than that, there's a lot of word of mouth. It turns out if you play League of Legends at a high level, you run into a lot of the same people a bunch, so you start to know people.
Gotcha.
References were incredibly useful in terms of filling out the team.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so I know from that we've got a pretty good number of former pros. There's Miles Horde, Daydreaming, Abe as well used to be one.
MIA from Complexity, Nick Wu.
Oh yeah,
also from Complexity.
Okay, and so that's not everybody though. Like I know you were talking as well to me at one point about some guy who came in from across the country, I think, and who didn't even have a background in game design or game playing specifically at a professional level. What's his deal?
Oh yeah, good old Kevin O'Brien.
Okay.
Yeah, he shared the name of one of our most famous coworkers, and that got him.
Made it a little annoying for emailing purposes. But, other than that,
every time I get one, I'm like, wait, which Kevin O'Brien is it?
The one who thinks he's good at League of Legends. No.
Yeah. But which Kevin O'Brien is it?
Right. So Kevin, he, used to work in a law firm. He did the lawyer things.
What?
Yeah.
Yes, he used to do. I'm just going to call it the lawyer things again.
Okay, he will like roll up in a suit to work.
Wow.
And you were just like,
I'm pretty sure he's just trolling us when he has his coffee mug. He sticks his elbow out, takes like a big long sip, and goes, "So guys, it's just Kevin O'Brien." That's
I have
stuff
got
he
to
does.
meet this guy.
Yeah.
How old is he?
Yes.
Okay,
Nice.
there you go.
26 maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. he's
Somewhere
rocking
in
it.
the riot zone.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so he's working at a. I'm imagining him like Business Cat. You know, it's that meme where he's sitting there just in his office in his suit one day, and he goes, "I should play League of Legends for a living." How
So
did that work out?
He did play a lot of League of Legends. He knew someone who worked at Riot who was up to date on Playtest team, being a team that we were looking to hire on. And, this person who worked at Riot already knew Kevin was good-ish, Believe that. So
This is the man we want.
That's the nicest thing I've ever heard someone say about Kevin.
He was Diamond 5 at the time, and Kevin's like, oh man, they're looking for good players. I got to go grind some games. So a dirty Fizz main, just spams that champion, peaks at D3, but, when application came through, that was good enough at the time. So regardless, he probably wasn't the best player we've ever had on the team in terms of skill. Like he did everything really well in terms of feedback, communication, staying focused in games, all that stuff. But his skill was often a little under the bar we were trying to set. But turns out we found a positive use for that. We developed what we call the Kevin O'Brien test, the old KOB. So, when stuff is in iteration, it is very often overtuned to the point where, if it hit anything, people go, oh, that shit's OP, broken, hyperbole galore.
Yeah.
That's not particularly actionable, and you can't really do much with that. So when we think something is that strong, we're like, all right, Kevin, play this champion. So Kevin gets it, he's like, oh, baby.
Oh,
this
man.
is my time
Now's
to
my
shine.
time.
Yeah. Every once in a while, he'll go like 10-0 on, Elise when she used to be even more crazy. And we're like, we're going to ship this stuff? We're like, okay, not anymore. It failed the KOB test. We gave it to Kevin. He went off on it and probably needs some nerves.
So would he try and pull the Zyrene and be like, no, you guys you just suck? Or would he be like, yeah, I'm not this good?
Well, I feel like
he would be much more open about it. He's like, you guys, this is crazy strong. I would never do this well in a game.
The reverse, the Scott test is kind of the reverse. Is you'll hear people be like, hey, how are the iterations on this Jarvan thing going? It's like, oh, it seems okay. Really? I heard he took over a game. Yeah, but that's Scott. I'm gonna have someone that's mortal play him tomorrow, and then we're gonna see from there.
Yeah,
Kind of how it
Scott's
goes.
like, even KDA. People are like, no, nerf.
Yeah. Dude, I had to play against Scott one time in Riot Rumble. It frightened me.
Oh, I'm sure you did, because you have this habit of talking trash about people who are better than you at League of Legends.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I figured at some point he had stomped all over you.
Oh yeah. I got super bodied. It was on some weird Jedi plane. Like I need to go to train on a different planet.
Yeah,
or
but
something.
everyone who wasn't in that game got to spectate it, so that was a great time.
Yeah. So that was sick. Yeah, but no, I think what you're kind of talking about, where it's like it's not just about being able to play the game well. I think that to me is the most important thing because. Again, I'll go back to it. We're not just about saying like, oh yeah, we'll just have the best guys and put them in a room. Because if you've just had the best guys, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to get good feedback, or that they're even like professional, or that they're even nice or something.
Yeah, they
right?
might not have the right mind for it. They might not be able to work greatly and very well in a team. Like that's super important in this. You have one bad apple, I imagine that could screw things up pretty badly.
Yeah. So the most exciting thing for me has always been when interacting with Playtest is kind of getting to hang out with them and hear their thoughts on the game and what they think of our thoughts on the game, right? And like trying to help both sides kind of bridge the gap on saying like, hey, designers are very idealistic, generally speaking, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to make this item, and because of its presence, people will buy it for these purposes, right? Where playtesters and more high elo people are very realistic, right? They're just like, I know that you're building me this nice pushing item, but until you make it have 60 armor and MR, I'm not going to buy it, right? And so finding kind of the tug of war between that, I feel like both people get to learn a lot more than just, punch the time card, get the play tests on it, and then let it go.
Yeah, and I imagine you guys free up the I'll just say champion design team, as one in one case to actually just do more stuff. Like they can try and be crazier because then you guys are always there as that final call it like QA pass on these things. And then also it allows us to have like, some of our designers are not like incredible at League of Legends. We've got silver champion designers that I know of. So the fact that those people can still make something super awesome that gets them really excited might not necessarily have the capabilities to fine-tune all of the numbers precisely. That then gets kicked to you guys, and you guys are able to make sure that really cool vision gets out in a way that doesn't break the game in half.
Yeah. So what is some of the goofiest things that you've seen in a playtest? Is there like any experiences or any things, any like unreleased champions or whatever?
Oh yeah, I remember back in the day when we were doing some Urgot iterations. His ult would kind of spawn a Jace gate type thing, so like accelerate particles. Didn't accelerate particles. It split them into 3. So
just his?
No.
Right, I remember this. You could fire Ash Arrow
we had a
into the
Sejuani
gate.
and Ash. We're like, dodge this. It was the Matrix moment. Just kind of blast that through and it just goes everywhere. It's like, okay, this can't ship.
Yeah.
So 3 Lux ults?
I mean,
I don't
that
know
didn't
if-
count as a projectile.
Yeah.
So no,
Okay.
but
All right, I'll settle for 3 Ash arrows,
that
I
was
guess.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
the idea.
What
Yeah.
the hell? What about you, Scott?
I don't remember too much of a crazy thing. I guess the big thing was like Kindred when she had 75 more base range. Her bounties
Yeah.
were 2%. So she was just like what she is now, or what they are now, but on steroids. It was actually
Okay.
ridiculous.
Right.
You were just go
I remember
off.
the playtest that changed that. You and Nick, we were like, yeah, we're just going to suicide repeatedly for bounties because them getting 300 gold is less valuable than me getting 2% current HP damage.
Yeah, and that's kind of some of the coolest stuff to
Okay.
hear is
Break that stuff right up. Right.
the designers are some of the smartest folks I've ever met, but then they're not always the best at doing math.
Degenerate stuff.
Yeah, and so it's like if anyone's ever seen Proxy Singed ever, you're like, why would they do that? Why would they just kill themselves over and over to get money? That's wrong. That's not how my game's supposed to be played. And when you guys are just sort of like, well, this is worth 435 gold, and that's 300. Effective value, baby. You're just like you're almost shocked to your core. You're like, how could I have done this?
So where's the team going? I know, like as we mentioned, people are people move all over Riot all the time, and that's obviously the case with your team. I think Kevin O'Brien, for example, is off doing QA or something.
Yeah, he's
now.
doing release QA. So
Okay,
he
gotcha.
makes sure the game gets to players.
Gotcha. He a little more
One of those types of things.
Pretty important, actually. That's the
Turns out it is necessary
super
for
important. Thank you, Kevin O'Brien.
Yeah.
And so you guys are needing to fill things out, constantly. Are you still looking for people right now?
Yes, we are. So, plug here. Right? No, we are constantly looking for people who have strong communication skills. Draw a pretty hard line at Diamond 5, but the closer to Diamond 5 you are, the more impressive you have to be at everything else.
Gotcha.
So,
and that's Diamond 5 coming down. That's not like approaching Diamond 5. by the way.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've just been there for so long now.
Yeah. There's something beyond those hills I can escape.
And so I imagine that we're past the days of Reddit threads now. Are we using the careers website?
We are using the
Okay,
careers
all right.
website. There is a chance a Reddit thread makes an appearance. Again, going to all the high elo players play games with each other. You might see random people asking you online if you're one of those people like, so looking for a job? You understand much about League of Legends? Because that's also referrals tend to be the best hires or most consistent hires, I should say.
I think at least, especially in this line of work.
Yes.
Like what you're saying is like, oh, I play with this guy all the time. He is very smart and has never yelled. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, that is a great starting
Check,
point.
check, and check.
Have him send in a resume.
Exactly.
Let's see if he knows things. Yeah.
Well, so yeah, if any of you guys out there think you got the chops, check out the Riot Games career website for that listing. What's it called? Playtest Team Associate.
It's probably Playtest Team QA something or
something.
other.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
Control F playtest.
I think it's under quality insurance actually.
Okay. Oh, it's under
sure.
QA. Yeah.
Yes.
You will have to 1v1 Scott as your final test. But you get to choose what character he plays, so choose
Scott
wisely.
will be playing only with his left foot.
Yeah. Only then will we know if you are truly worthy.
Gotcha. So you guys are also, especially as the team has spun up a bunch now, I know you guys are starting to get out there as well and interacting with the community. You guys do, I think you do the bi-weekly, like with the patches, the patch chat thing where you
Patch
guys talk
chat.
about like what's that secret new strat that's coming out and have a Q&A with players and everything. And you're just out there on a lot of stuff. You're doing this as well. And I know I'm excited because like, there's this dynamic that happens like, hey, I'm the guy updating X champion, and it can get very oppositional because obviously they have a vested interest. People on the other side of the community might be opposed to that, but also maybe be better than the designer. But you guys kind of represent like almost an impartial, Forrest, a lot of you are like former pros as well and everything like that. So a bit more there, and you're obviously super good at the game. So I'm really excited for that dynamic that you guys have that I've seen with players. Like, what's that been like getting out there more and talking with players as the playtest team?
It's certainly humbling to a certain extent. For one, before I started working at Riot, I played a lot, thousands of games, literally. I used to play. I came from a Dota background.
Nerd.
Yeah, right? Correct. So just being able to kind of communicate with people who, quite frankly, are exactly where I used to be, that already is fun.
Yeah, super cool.
Being a player first, I get to talk about League of Legends. That's also pretty cool. So just across the board, it's a good experience from my end as well.
Awesome. What's it been like for you, Scott? Have you gotten out there engaging with the community yet? I know some of you guys are still spinning up on that.
To be honest, I haven't done too much of community interaction.
That's fine. You're too far aloof. We got to keep you separate from mere mortals. guys.
Yeah.
He would be like, "Here's what I think." Player would be like, "I disagree. I am this much better than you."
Yeah. I can hold your matchmaking rating in one hand and crush it.
We gotta think up some most interesting man in the world things for Scott sometime.
Oh yeah,
we'll get those out there. That can be his intro to the community.
I'm down. That's what is it? It's like Scott is so good at League of Legends. He once scored a pentakill on Twisted Tree Line.
Yes, perfect. Okay,
he is the highest rated player at Riot. Just Photoshop a beard onto you. That's
You're perfect.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Well, so I before we head out here, guys, I want to, this is, it's going to sound simple, but I kind of mean it in a pretty personal way. Is how do you feel like the experience has been for you? Do you enjoy it? Do you feel like you've really grown through all of this? Because I know this is honestly one of those things that people on the outside are like, whoa, getting paid to play video games, that's so cool, right? But it's, it couldn't be further from the trials and the challenges that you guys actually have. Like, what has the experience honestly been like? Is it, do you dig it? How has it been?
Sure. Well, my honest opinion is like, it's probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. It's
look at Scarborough trying to set all these like expectations and context.
It's
like,
really
I know there
rough,
are challenges.
It's
enjoying life sometimes.
But it is the best.
There's definitely a lot of difficulties and bumps in the road, right? When I first started, I was just a really good player. My communication skills may have been a bit off. Even now, I struggle sometimes to speak to some designers. Yeah. So it's something that I'm able to develop a lot of my skill set, which is like a really cool opportunity, while at the same time still playing League of Legends and being able to impact the game in my eyes, in a positive way, hopefully.
I imagine that's got to be really cool as well. Like, like seeing that thing you did that went out for the better, and maybe also on the Zyrene side of like, damn, I screwed us over.
Yo, for all the people who played Rek'Sai, that was a positive impact.
Guys, let's give him some credit. Rek'Sai's Q used to have a slow on it. You can thank Zyrene for removing that. I mean, not entirely.
I'm gonna hug him later.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, thank you.
That used to slow. So ponder that one for a bit before you go blaming him on.
Zyrene is the dark knight of playtest.
Yeah, the one we deserve, but not the one we need right now.
Yeah.
All right.
So, well, I was going to give you a chance to.
It's similar in the sense that I'm fortunate enough to wake up and look forward to going to work. Previous background, I couldn't necessarily say that. So, I get to do the thing I love and make money doing it. That's not the driving force, but it's a nice aside.
Holy shit, Adam! Now I know.
I'm deeply intrigued. What was that previous background?
I used to be a physics major, and I worked in
a
physics
too,
lab.
Man. Okay, I didn't get that far. I was just no. I was a physics major.
Like the same stuff. That's
I was a physics major for a time in college, and then decided. I remember I had a Calc 2 professor named Dragonev who talked like this, and
that sounds like most of my teachers. Actually,
and I just sat there. I got a test back, and I got a like C+ on it, and I just looked at it and I was like, man, I really hate this crap, don't you? Turn to my buddy who now works at NASA, and he looked at me, and I see he's got an A-, and he's like, no, I actually really like it. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to get out of here. So you actually worked in a lab?
I did.
Okay.
That was
All right.
That was
Well, that's-
something.
Were
That's
you
a-
the subject? Were you what they were testing in the lab?
Well, that's a tale for another time. I'm sure we're going to be having you guys back on, either this or the streams at some point, or some of our other features. But want to take, want to thank you guys for taking the time to come out here. I'm sure you got some more playtesting to go do. So we will let you get back to that. To all you folks out there, make sure to like, subscribe, listen. Let us know what we can do better. Let us know what you liked, all that kind of stuff, so we can keep getting better. Thank you to everybody for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
And if you're really good at League of Legends, apply.
Oh yeah, the careers page.